Hi, my name's Kayla. And if you've ever been treated like the black sheep of your own family cut off, belittled, and betrayed for daring to speak the truth, then my story might hit a little too close to home. I used to believe that family always stuck together, that blood meant something, but I was wrong. Because when money's involved, masks slip, and the people who claim to love you, they'll show you exactly who they are when there's something to gain. Let me take you back to the moment everything began to fall apart, though. Honestly, I should have seen it coming. My grandma, Eloise, was the only person in my family who saw me. Like, really saw me. She wasn't flashy or loud, she was warm in the kind of way that made you feel safe just being near her. She had these silver curls she refused to dye and eyes that seemed to know when you were lying, even if you didn't speak. Growing up, she was my escape. My parents, Thomas and Dana, always found something to criticize me for. I wasn't as smart as my older brother Brandon, or as agreeable as my younger sister Lily. I was just the middle one, the too sensitive one, the one who asked uncomfortable questions. Like when I was 16 and found out my dad had taken out a second mortgage on the house to buy a boat, even though Mom said we couldn't afford to help with my college fund. Or when I told Lily it was wrong to fake being sick to get out of volunteering at the shelter, and she cried to Mom that I was emotionally abusive. That was always the pattern. I'd call out bad behavior, and suddenly I was the villain. But Grandma never played that game. She encouraged me to question things, to stand up for what I knew was right, to be strong, even when I felt completely alone. Every Sunday, I'd visit her little cottage on the outskirts of town. She'd make herbal tea, and we'd sit on her porch swing while she told me stories from her youth, how she'd marched for civil rights in the 60s, how she'd started her own accounting firm when women weren't even allowed their own credit cards. She was fire wrapped in silk, and I wanted to be just like her. But not everyone appreciated her independence. My dad especially. He was her only son. And even though she helped him launch his business, loaned him money when no one else would, he never forgave her for being too opinionated. That's what he called her. Too opinionated. As if that was some kind of crime. When she got sick, things got worse. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. She told me before she told anyone else. I remember sitting in her kitchen, watching the steam rise from our teacups as she calmly said, "I want you to be the executor of my estate, Kayla." I blinked. Me? Not Dad. She smiled. "I trust you." It felt like the kindest compliment, and the heaviest burden all at once. I didn't tell my family about that conversation, partly because I didn't want to start a war, and partly because maybe I was scared of what they'd say. But I did everything I could to be there for her. Drove her to chemo, took notes at doctor's visits, cooked meals she could keep down. Meanwhile, my parents would drop off flowers once a week and post about it on Facebook like they were saints. Brandon and Lily? They only visited when she promised to give them early gifts from her jewelry collection. And she did. She gave away pieces that didn't matter to her costume stuff, mostly. But she kept the things that meant something locked away in a box under her bed. One day, as I helped her sort papers, she said, "They're going to be furious when they see the will." I frowned. Why? She looked at me with tired eyes. Because they think love is transactional. But you showed up. You didn't ask for anything. That matters more than blood. She passed away 3 weeks later, peacefully, in her sleep. I was the one who found her. The grief hit like a freight train. I couldn't speak at the funeral. I just stood there, clutching the pendant she'd given me days before she died. It had her initials etched on the back. Inside was a photo of us from when I was 6 years old, both of us covered in flour after a failed baking attempt. My parents didn't invite me to the after-service luncheon. They claimed it was too crowded. I found out later they'd hosted it at our family home with over 50 people. Lily posted pictures online. Brandon gave a speech. I didn't even get a text. I tried to tell myself it was just grief, that they were acting cold because they didn't know how to process losing her. But then came the final straw, the will reading. I only found out it had happened after the fact. I'd been calling her lawyer's office, trying to get a meeting, but they kept rescheduling. Until one day, I got a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Hi, Kayla. This is Marcus Flynn Eloise's estate attorney. I was made aware that the family told you the reading already occurred. That's not accurate. We've been waiting for you. Call me back as soon as you can. I remember staring at the wall, my phone still pressed to my ear, my heart pounding so loud I could barely think. They lied to me. They excluded me. On purpose. I drove straight to the law office, still in my work clothes, barely holding back tears. Marcus was waiting in the lobby. Older gentleman, soft voice, sharp eyes. The kind of guy you could tell knew how to keep secrets and when to reveal them. He led me to a private conference room and shut the door behind us. I'm sorry, he said, sliding a thick folder toward me. Your grandmother anticipated resistance from your family. What do you mean? He opened the file. Eloise changed her will 6 months before she passed. She named you the primary beneficiary. The house, the savings accounts, the stocks, the car, everything. I blinked. All of it? He nodded. She left personal letters as well. One for each family member, and one for you. He slid a sealed envelope toward me. On the front, in delicate handwriting, Kayla. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. They may call you ungrateful, selfish, or dramatic. Let them. You saw me. You honored me. This is my way of honoring you. Build something beautiful, my girl. You don't owe anyone your silence. I couldn't breathe. She said she told your parents about the changes. Marcus continued. They didn't take it well. They tried to contest it preemptively. I believe they told the rest of the family you'd been written out. It made sense now. The cold shoulders, the exclusion, the carefully crafted narrative. I was the ungrateful one, the disappointment, the liar because the truth was too inconvenient. They were ashamed that Grandma had seen through them. I looked up at Marcus. What happens next? He smiled faintly. That's up to you. But she left detailed instructions for how she wanted her legacy handled, including a very specific public statement if you so choose. My jaw clenched. I choose. Because they wanted to erase me. But Grandma had handed me a spotlight, and it was time to shine it on everything they wanted to hide. I walked out of that law office with the will tucked tightly in my bag. Grandma's letter still clutched in my hand. My legs felt numb. My head was spinning. But one thing was sharp, clear, and burning inside me like a flare. They wanted me to disappear. They buried me under their lies and smiled through the dirt. But Grandma had handed me the shovel, and I was going to dig myself out and burn the whole illusion they built along with it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every moment of the past few months. Every backhanded comment. Every silent dinner. Every time they looked through me like I wasn't even there. They had rewritten the story of her death before she was even cold. Told everyone I was too ungrateful to care. That I didn't show up. That Grandma had cut me out. The fact that they didn't just lie but made me the villain made something inside me snap. They wanted to strip me of my truth? Fine. I'd show them what truth actually looked like by the next morning. I had a plan, and I didn't care how theatrical it was. Sometimes revenge needs a stage. First, I contacted Marcus. I want to execute the will exactly as Grandma intended. Publicly. He didn't hesitate. I figured you'd say that. She prepared a video. I stopped breathing. A video. He nodded. She recorded it the same day she updated the will. She asked that it only be played after the full legal process had been completed, and in front of all beneficiaries. That gave me chills. Grandma hadn't just planned ahead. She'd anticipated everything. She knew they'd lied to me. I whispered, She did, Marcus said softly. But she also knew you wouldn't let them win. The estate process moved fast after that. Since the other beneficiaries, my parents, Brandon and Lily, had no legal claim anymore, all their attempts to block the process crumbled. Once they were officially notified of the final version of the will, the panic began. It started with the phone calls. First Mom, then Dad, then Brandon. Voicemails flooded my phone, full of fake concern and sudden, syrupy sweetness. Kayla, sweetheart, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Hey kiddo, can we put the past behind us? Grandma wouldn't want us fighting. Okay, look, I think emotions just got the best of everyone, but maybe we can work something out. Like a compromise. Funny, there was no misunderstanding when they blacklisted me from her funeral. No compromise when they smeared my name behind my back. They were only crawling back because the truth had claws now. I didn't answer a single message. Instead, I made an announcement. I rented out a small hall, the same one they'd used for Grandma's 80th birthday, and sent a formal invitation to every family member, friend, and mutual contact I could think of. A final celebration of life and estate resolution in accordance with Eloise Carter's wishes. No one knew exactly what that meant, but curiosity would drag them in like flies. And it did. When the day came, they all showed up. Dozens of them. The cousins who'd unfollowed me on social media. The aunt who'd told me to get over myself. The family friends who treated me like I didn't exist at the funeral. They were all there, buzzing with whispers, wondering why I, of all people, was standing at the front of the room beside a projector and a lawyer. My parents sat in the second row, stone-faced. Brandon and Lily flanked them, glaring at me like I'd committed a crime just by breathing. I stood tall. I know some of you were told I was cut out of Grandma Eloise's will. I began. That I didn't care. That I disappeared. The murmurs started instantly. People shifted in their seats. Some frowned. Some looked away. That wasn't true. She named me as her executor, her primary beneficiary, and her chosen voice. And she asked me to do one final thing for her. I looked over at Marcus and nodded. He pressed play. The screen flickered. And there she was, Grandma wearing her favorite sky blue sweater, seated in her porch swing, eyes sharp as ever. If you're watching this, she said, then my body's in the ground. But my spirit is still here, especially if you've been dishonest. A ripple of laughter mixed with tension spread through the room. I want to address my children Thomas, Dana, and my grandchildren Brandon, Lily, and Kayla. At this, Lily leaned forward. Brandon narrowed his eyes. Grandma continued, I raised you all with the belief that family meant more than appearances. That kindness came before entitlement. And yet, in my final days, only one person showed up for me consistently. One person who asked for nothing. One person who sat with me in silence when I was too weak to talk. She smiled faintly. That was Kayla. I glanced at my parents. My mother's lips parted, slightly shaking. My father's jaw clenched. Brandon folded his arms. Lily looked ready to cry, but not out of remorse, out of rage. I saw how the rest of you behaved. Grandma went on, her voice sharper now. The visits with cameras, the performative grief, the backroom discussions about who gets what. Let me be perfectly clear, I was not confused. I was not manipulated. I made my decisions in full awareness, and I left a paper trail to prove it. Gasps rippled through the audience. As of 6 months prior to my death, I removed Thomas, Dana, Brandon, and Lily as beneficiaries of my estate. Someone choked. Every asset I own, my home, my savings, my shares has been left to Kayla. Because she showed love without conditions. Because she stood up for me. And because she represents the kind of legacy I'm proud of. Then, the soft edge returned to her voice. My darling Kayla, I know this will be hard. I know they'll come for you. But don't let them shame you. For what I gave you, you earned it. And if they tried to twist that, Let this video speak louder. The screen faded to black silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Then came the eruption. This is ridiculous. My father barked, jumping to his feet. She was clearly manipulated. She was dying. Mom hissed. She didn't know what she was saying. Are you people seriously just letting this slide? Brandon snarled at Marcus. This is fraud? No, Marcus said calmly. It's binding. And it's final. My voice cut through the chaos. I didn't come here for your approval. I came here to show you the truth. You made up a story where I was selfish, difficult, disposable, because it was easier than admitting that you were the ones who abandoned her. My mother turned to me, eyes glassy. She was my mother, Kayla, and she spent the last 6 months dying alone while you posted brunch selfies. That shut her up. I won't be giving you money. I won't be giving you keys. And I won't be inviting you into the house she built. You made your choices. Brandon stormed out. Lily muttered something under her breath and followed him. My dad glared at me one last time and spat. You'll regret this. I smiled. No, you will. The fallout came fast. The video made its way online. Someone from the audience had recorded it on their phone. Within days, it went viral. Grandma's last words became a trending tag. The internet had opinions, of course, but the consensus was clear. Justice was served. My parents tried to sue, failed. Brandon gave a whiny podcast interview about inheritance theft, got ratioed into oblivion. Lily went radio silent, probably, too embarrassed to show her face. And me? I moved into Grandma's house, painted the porch swing, set up her favorite tea set in the kitchen. And every morning, I touch the pendant around my neck and whisper, I honored you, just like you honored me. But we're not done yet. Because Grandma didn't just give me money. She gave me the blueprint for something bigger. Something that would change everything. I used to think revenge was just a moment. A single glorious instant of justice. Flashing like lightning, blinding, beautiful, and then gone. But I was wrong. Real revenge is a slow burn. It's reclaiming space they tried to take from you. It's rewriting the narrative they thought they'd already finished. It's building something so powerful, so undeniable, that they can't look at it without seeing everything they lost. And that's exactly what I planned to do. Grandma's house became more than just shelter. It became sacred ground. Every corner whispered her memory, the smell of cinnamon from the pantry, the hand-sewn curtains she refused to replace, the tiny chimes that sang when the wind passed through the screen door. I didn't renovate it to wipe her away. I preserved it, protected it, but I also made it mine. I turned her office into a small studio, bought a proper mic, a camera, a secondhand editing setup. I didn't fully know why at first, but something inside me said, speak. So I did. I made a video. Not the typical kind. Not a rant. Not a clapback. A story. I told the truth, not just about the will or the video, but about what it's like to be treated like a problem child, for having boundaries, for not staying silent, for noticing hypocrisy and calling it what it is. I called the video when family tries to erase you. I didn't use names. I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. I expected maybe a few hundred views, some scattered support. What I got instead was an avalanche. Hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands of comments, messages from people who said things like, you told my story. I thought I was alone. They made me feel crazy for remembering things differently. But now I know I wasn't. I cried reading them. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt seen in the exact way Grandma had always seen me. But the part that really flipped the script, my inbox. Because among all, the personal messages were a few from journalists, writers, podcast producers, even a few mid-level documentary creators. They all wanted to know the full story. One woman in particular stood out, telling a tran. an independent reporter who ran a series called Silent Scars, focusing on family estrangement, financial manipulation, and generational trauma. We talked for hours. She didn't ask exploitative questions. She didn't push for names. She just listened, asked gently, took notes, and when her article dropped, everything exploded again. This time, there were ripples. Ways. Elena single quotes as, "Peace went beyond me." She interviewed state attorneys about common tactics families used to pressure or punish dissenting children. She included psychological expert commentary on gaslighting and scapegoat syndrome. She even got quotes from anonymous sources inside my own extended family, people who'd secretly supported me, but were too afraid to say it until now. And guess what? Turns out I wasn't the only one my parents had tried to erase. A second cousin reached out, Jessica, someone I barely remembered from childhood gatherings. She told me that when her mom left an abusive husband years ago, my parents told the family she'd run off with a married man, cut her off, blacklisted her. It wasn't true, but they controlled the narrative, and no one questioned it. Jessica had read Elena's article and said, "I think your grandma knew how deep the rot went, and I think you just lit a match under the whole thing." She was right, but I wasn't done yet. Because while the internet applauded and sympathized, my family went into full meltdown mode. Brandon posted cryptic tweets about narcissistic attention seekers and how some people will use the dead to get famous. Lily posted a long Instagram story with crying selfies and a violin playing emoji in the caption. I guess being the villain gets more likes these days. My parents, they lawyered up again. This time, not to contest the will. They knew that battle was over, but to demand a retraction of the article. Marcus laughed when he got the letter. It's an opinion piece, supported by legal documents and protected speech. He told me, "They're trying to scare you." And it wasn't working. I'd spent years being quiet to keep the peace. But there's no peace in pretending to be someone else. There's no comfort in silence when the silence is a lie. So I doubled down. I started a YouTube channel, not to spill tea or drag people by name, but to talk about healing after betrayal, financial abuse, the myth of the perfect family. Boundaries. It grew fast. People weren't just watching, they were engaging, sharing, sending me letters and DMs with stories like mine, asking for advice, encouragement, hope. And then one day, an opportunity dropped into my inbox that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a message from a representative of the Waverly Foundation, a nonprofit organization focused on supporting young women estranged from toxic families, especially in cases involving inheritance manipulation or isolation due to non-compliance with family image. They'd seen my video. Read Elena's article, and they wanted to partner. Would you be interested in creating a community branch under our umbrella? A place where young women can access resources, support, and advocacy. I said yes so fast. I think I scared them. We called it the Second Circle, a space for those pushed to the outside of their own families, a place to rebuild. I used grandma's money, her money, to rent a modest office space, hire a trauma counselor, and build a small staff. People who got it, people who lived it. And here's the kicker. Guess who found out? My Aunt Rena, Dad's younger sister, the one who moved states away and rarely showed up at family events. I always thought she was just flaky. Turns out she was escaping. She emailed me personally, said she saw the videos, recognized our last name, then she dropped a bomb. My mom wanted you to have everything because she saw the exact same cruelty in your dad that I endured my entire childhood. I left at 18 and never went back. She loved him, but she never stopped trying to correct what she thought was her failure as a mother. I sat with that email for a long time, reread it a dozen times, let it hit. Grandma hadn't just chosen me randomly. She saw the pattern, and she wanted to break it through me. So I did what I knew she'd want. I invited Aunt Rena to the house. When she stepped onto the porch, tears filled her eyes. She touched the railings, the swing, the chipped paint. "This place feels like her," she whispered. We talked for hours. She filled in pieces of Grandma's life I never knew. Things she was too proud or maybe too ashamed to tell me when she was alive. About how she tried so hard to hold the family together. About how she left certain assets unclaimed just so she wouldn't have to fight with my father again. And that's when I realized the real revenge wasn't in cutting them out. It was in lifting the people they pushed down. Rebuilding something they couldn't touch. Creating a life so rich in love and purpose that their absence was a blessing, not a loss. But that doesn't mean I'm done, because there's one more thing. A secret Grandma never told anyone. Something I found in a locked drawer in her old bedroom. And once I opened that drawer, the final piece of the puzzle slid into place. They thought the inheritance was the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I don't know what I expected to find in that drawer. Maybe some old letters, a few photos, something sentimental, something Grandma had kept close to her chest, but still simple, gentle. What I found was anything but. The drawer had no visible handle, just a subtle groove at the edge. I passed over it at least a dozen times before curiosity finally got the best of me. I'd been cleaning out the guest room, planning to turn it into an office for the second circle. The sun was pouring through the lace curtains and everything felt peaceful. Until that drawer gave. It slid open with a soft wooden creak. And inside was a manila envelope. Nothing written on it. Just heavy, purposeful. I pulled it out, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened it. The first thing I saw was a birth certificate. Then a second one. And a stack of old photos. And at the bottom, a letter. Not addressed to me. But to Thomas, my father. I read the letter. Once. Then again. And again. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. Because Grandma had been keeping a secret. A massive one. A second child. A first child. Not Rena. Not Dad. Someone else. His name was Michael. Born 4 years before my father. Conceived when Grandma was barely 19 and still living under her own abusive parents' roof. She hadn't been allowed to raise him. They'd sent her to a reform home for unwed mothers, forced her to give the baby up for adoption, and then acted like he never existed. But Grandma never forgot. She found him decades later, quietly, carefully. They met in secret, wrote letters, exchanged photos. He was kind, gentle, a school teacher, married with 2 kids, and unlike my father who had grown bitter and greedy, who saw her love as something to possess and control. Michael loved her without conditions, just like I had. The letter was dated only a year before her death. Thomas, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm done being afraid of your reaction. You always demanded the full truth from me unless the truth didn't make you look good. This is your full truth. You had an older brother. His name is Michael. He is my son. My first, my deepest heartbreak, and my quietest joy. My head was spinning. I couldn't process it all at once. Grandma had another son. My dad had a brother he didn't know about. And she left all of it hidden in a drawer I wasn't supposed to find until now. But that wasn't all. Tucked behind the letter was a single slip of paper, a contact card. Michael Weston. Phone number, email, city, Portland, Oregon. I sat in stunned silence, and then I realized what Grandma had really done. She hadn't just left me an inheritance. She'd left me a choice. Because this changed everything. I stared at the number for 3 full days before I finally picked up the phone and called. It rang 4 times. Then a man's voice answered, warm, gentle, confused. Hello, hi. Is this Michael Weston speaking? I paused. My throat tightened. My name is Kayla Carter. I think we might be related. Silence. Then, go on. I told him everything. Not just about the drawer, or the letter, or the will, but about my father. about what they did after. Grandma died. About the lies, the exclusion, the video dot, and the secret they never saw coming. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made my chest ache. I never blamed her, you know. I always wondered why she never told the rest of the family. But I figured she had her reasons. She wanted to. She was just scared of him, of all of them. He let out a long breath. Well, she doesn't have to be scared anymore. We talked for 2 hours. And then, the next morning, he emailed me. I'd like to come. Visit if that's okay. When he arrived 2 weeks later, it was like something cosmic clicked into place. He had Grandma's eyes, the same gentle silver blue, the same calm steadiness in his voice. He brought photos of his kids, his wife, his classroom. He brought the letters Grandma had written him, birthday cards, newspaper clippings she mailed. They'd been building a relationship in secret for almost 15 years. Why didn't she put you in the will? I asked gently. She wanted to, he said, but I asked her not to. I didn't want the money. I just wanted to know her. I nodded slowly. She'd be so proud of you. He smiled. Of you, Kayla. She called you her mirror. Something inside me cracked open at that. Not from pain, but from a kind of joy that felt like it didn't have words. But we weren't done, because the family still didn't know. And while I hadn't planned to drag skeletons out of closets for sport, this one needed to be dragged, because it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about legacy. So I came up with an idea. We were planning the official launch for the second Circle, a public event with press coverage, donors, survivors, advocates, and I knew exactly how to make it unforgettable. I invited my parents. Brandon. Lily. They didn't RSVP, but I knew they'd come. They couldn't resist the attention. The launch was beautiful. We held it in a restored arts center downtown, filled with light and soft music and displays of letters from women who'd found strength through our community. There was a memorial table for Grandma, covered in her favorite yellow tulips, and a photo of her on that porch swing. I gave a speech about healing, boundaries, reclaiming your story. And then I said, there's one more part of my story I haven't told you. The room hushed. After my grandmother passed, I found something, a piece of her life none of us knew about, a child she had been forced to give up, who she later reconnected with, quietly, tenderly, and in the most sacred way. I turned, and Michael walked onto the stage. The collective gasp was delicious. My father's face went pale. My mother reached for her chair. Brandon looked like he'd seen a ghost. This is Michael Weston, I said. My uncle, my grandmother's firstborn, and the piece of our family they tried to bury, but couldn't. Michael stepped forward and spoke. He didn't gloat, didn't rage. He simply told the truth about what it means to be hidden. About grace, about the mother who fought to reclaim him, and the granddaughter who refused to stay quiet. And by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, except for my father. He stood in the back, still trembling. When it was over, I walked up to him. He didn't look at me. You knew, he said. His voice was shaking. You knew he existed, and you let us walk into this blind. I stared him straight in the eye. You lied about me for months, called me ungrateful, disowned me, buried my name. He swallowed. This was cruel. No, I said, stepping closer. Cruel is watching your own daughter find comfort in a hospice room while you count jewelry. This was justice. He said nothing, just turned and walked away. Brandon and Lily didn't even speak to me. But it didn't matter, because this time, I wasn't trying to belong. I was building something entirely new. And Grandma, she knew the whole time. This was her final gift, the truth. I used to think once the truth came out, everything would fall into place. That the liars would scatter, the damage would heal, and maybe, just maybe, I'd get some peace. But what I didn't realize is that truth doesn't end anything it exposes. What was always there, and not everyone is ready to be seen in the light. After the launch event, the shockwaves didn't just ripple, they detonated. Overnight, the story spread beyond our local community. News outlets picked it up. Estranged granddaughter honors dying grandmother's legacy by exposing family secret at charity gala. Every angle was irresistible. Drama, redemption, empowerment. Grandma's video even resurfaced again, climbing back into viral territory. People were watching, listening, and not everyone was happy about it. Within 48 hours, my father's company lost 2 major clients. One of them, a sustainability firm Grandma had invested in, terminated their contract, citing ethical misalignment. The other just ghosted. Rumor was they didn't want to be associated with the optics. I wasn't trying to destroy him, but the truth has its own gravitational pull. And if you're standing too close to lies, you're going to be dragged under with them. I started getting messages from people I didn't even know. Old family friends, church members, former clients, of dads, some supportive, others bitter. And then there was her Savannah, my cousin on my mother's side. We'd never been close growing up, but after Grandma passed, she reached out, said she'd seen what the family had done to me, said she was ashamed of how everyone had treated me at the funeral. She even helped me set up the floral display for the launch event, volunteered at the community center, became a regular at the Second Circle gatherings. She was warm, supportive, easy to trust. Until she WASN single quotes T. It started with subtle things. A photo she posted that blurred out my face captioned at Kayla's event, but tagged no one. A comment she made to a reporter at a networking function, calling herself a founding team member of the Second Circle, which she wasn't. Then she started asking questions about the finances, about donor lists, about Grandma's estate. It didn't sit right. One afternoon, I walked into the community office and found her sitting at my desk, flipping through an open drawer. She jumped when I came in. "Oh, I was just looking for some extra pens," she said, smiling too quickly. My drawer didn't have pens. It had personal letters, checks, receipts. "Next time, ask," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. That was the moment the switch flipped. The smile vanished. The mask slipped. She shrugged. "It's not like this is all your story. You're not the only one who cared about Grandma." I didn't reply. I just walked over, took the folder out of her hand, and calmly placed it back into the drawer. She left 5 minutes later. And 2 days after that, the email came, a formal complaint, filed anonymously to the Waverly Foundation, alleging misappropriation of funds, hostile workplace behavior, and nepotism in staff selection. I knew it was her. She'd written it in the exact same wording she used when texting me earlier that week. She called our team emotionally cliquish, used the phrase grief vulturing, which I never even heard before until she said it during a heated argument about whether we should allow press into our trauma recovery sessions. Waverly reached out for a conversation. It wasn't accusatory, more like protocol. Still, it stung. I sat across from their director, a kind-eyed woman named Julia, and laid everything out. The will, the launch, Savannah's sudden involvement, the incident at the desk, the veiled threats. "She's trying to claw her way into something that isn't hers," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "She wants recognition without the responsibility. And when I set a boundary, she decided to burn the whole thing down." Julia nodded, taking notes. "You're not the first person to face this, Kayla. Power attracts opportunists, especially when it comes from a place of emotional resonance. You created something meaningful, and that makes some people jealous." I clenched my fists. "I'm not going to let her twist this into a scandal." "You won't," she said, "but you'll need to respond with grace and strategy." That night, I sat on Grandma's porch swing, trying to calm the rage bubbling in my chest. I hated that this was happening. That even now, after everything, someone could step in and try to hijack my story, my grief, my growth. That someone could weaponize what I built in her name. But then I remembered something Grandma once said to me when I was 17 and crying over a betrayal from a fake friend. People will try to wear your skin when they see you rising, but they can't mimic your soul. Eventually, the mask slips. Let it. So I let it. And I made one final video, not defensive, not angry, but clearer. I called it, "This is still my story." It wasn't about Savannah. It was about the reality of what happens when people try to exploit grief. When they see someone standing in the light and decide they're entitled to a piece of the glow, without understanding the darkness it came from. I told my audience the truth. That betrayal doesn't just come from enemies. It often comes wrapped in a smile. And that doesn't mean you stop trusting. It means you build wisely. It went viral in a different way. Less explosive. More visceral. It was quoted in journals, cited in TEDx talks, shared across communities I'd never even heard of before. And Waverly, they issued a full statement, clearing me, reaffirming our partnership, backing me publicly. Savannah disappeared shortly after that, blocked me, deleted her posts, moved on to another project in another city. But by then, the message was clear. The world wasn't just watching me anymore. They were watching the movement. And that's when the final wave began, because someone else had been watching, not for fame, not for influence, but for revenge. Someone I hadn't expected to hear from ever again. Brandon. My brother. It started with a message. No greeting. No subject line. Just, "We need to talk about Dad." I stared at the screen for a long time, and against every instinct I had, I answered. We met at a diner outside town, somewhere neutral. He looked older, tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his once perfect posture now had a slump in it. He didn't say much at first, just stirred his coffee, wouldn't look me in the eye. "I messed up," he finally said. "Which part?" I asked coldly. He flinched, but then he reached into his bag and slid a flash drive across the table. I didn't touch it. "What is that?" "Evidence," he said. "Dad's been hiding more than we knew. Tax stuff, shell accounts. Some of it goes back to when Grandma loaned him money to start his company. He never paid her back. Faked the papers. She never pushed him on it because she was scared of fracturing the family." My stomach turned. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're the only one who can burn him down. And honestly, I want to watch him fall." There was pain in his eyes, real pain, and shame. "I let him poison me, Kayla. I wanted to believe you were the villain because it was easier than admitting he was." I didn't respond. Not at first. But eventually, I reached for the drive. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just my story anymore. This was war, not of anger, not of spite, but of truth. And the final act was just beginning. The moment I took that flash drive from Brandon, I felt it in my bones. Something irreversible had started. This wasn't petty revenge anymore. This wasn't internet exposure, viral videos, or emotional validation. This was financial, legal, and generational reckoning. The kind of revenge that outlasts the applause. When I got home, I didn't plug the flash drive into my laptop. Not right away. I poured a glass of water, sat on the porch swing Grandma built, and stared out at the late evening sky. The orange haze bled into a darkening horizon, and the wind made the wind chimes murmur gently. It felt like she was there. And I whispered, "Let's finish this." When I finally opened the contents, my breath caught. Brandon wasn't exaggerating. There were spreadsheets, bank statements, property deeds under dummy names. A scanned copy of a document titled Loan Repayment Agreement. Eloise Carter, Ann Thomas. Carter, 1994. Only. The signature on Grandma's line, it wasn't hers. I'd seen her signature hundreds of times. on birthday cards, on checks, on the will. This one was close, but it wasn't hers. My father had forged it. 20 years ago, when Grandma gave him $200, zero to launch his first venture. Money she'd saved over decades. He never repaid it. Worse, he faked the repayment, filed it as completed to avoid taxation on the forgiven debt. Then, through shell accounts and internal family transfers, used her generosity as a write-off while slowly cutting her influence from the company she helped him start. The man hadn't just betrayed me. He'd betrayed her. And suddenly, I understood why she gave me everything. She hadn't just wanted to honor me. She'd wanted me to protect her legacy, to restore what he tried to erase. I met with Marcus the next morning. He studied the drive's contents for over an hour in silence. Then he leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed with quiet fire. "This isn't just financial fraud," he said. "It's wire fraud, tax evasion, forgery. There's enough here to open a federal case." I nodded slowly. "Can we do it?" He smiled grimly. "We don't have to. All we have to do is start the conversation, and he'll unravel himself, trying to cover it up." So we started. Quietly. First, a whistleblower tip submitted to the IRS. Then a private investigator one Marcus trusted was hired to verify the properties under the Shell LLCs Brandon had uncovered. A journalist from the same outlet Elena Tran worked for was tipped off anonymously. She'd been following the story since the launch event and had already written to follow-ups on legacy abuse and elder financial exploitation. When she saw the documents, she called me personally. "This could blow up his entire career," she said. "Are you ready for that?" I didn't even pause. "He blew up his soul a long time ago. I'm just showing everyone the ashes." While the investigation rolled forward like a freight train in the background, I stayed calm on the surface. Kept hosting events at the Second Circle, recorded podcast interviews, helped women apply for emergency grants. To anyone watching, it looked like I'd moved on. But beneath the calm, a storm was brewing. And then, 2 months later, the first domino fell. A formal notice arrived at my father's company headquarters. A financial audit. Random, they claimed. But nothing about this was random. He knew it. I knew it. Brandon confirmed. He flipped when he got the letter, started accusing employees of leaks, scrambled to fix past records. But the more he scrambled, the more mistakes he made. Then came the article, front page of a national business outlet, Family Legacy, Corporate Fraud, the Cracks in Thomas Carter's Empire. The journalist did her homework. Timeline. Documents. Screenshots. Quotes from 3 former business partners, including one who admitted he left after being pressured to fake invoices. And in the middle of it all, me, not named explicitly, but referenced, the granddaughter who inherited nothing but questions and refused to stop asking. When it hit the newsstands, my phone blew up. Calls, emails, interviews, and one more thing, an invitation. A speakers panel. Topic: rebuilding when family fails. You. And guess who else had been invited? Michael. My uncle. I called him immediately. "Will you do it?" He chuckled softly. "I was hoping you'd ask." So there we were. On stage. Me, Michael, a trauma therapist, and a woman who'd written a best-selling book on escaping religious family cults. The room was packed. We talked about resilience. But more than that, we talked about reclamation. How sometimes healing means lighting a fire and walking through it. How truth is a blade, but it's also a key. And when the Q&A opened, someone asked me, "What do you say to people who accuse you of being vindictive?" I smiled. I say they never had to sit in a silent hospital room with someone dying while the people who should have loved her the loudest were off negotiating her jewelry. The room went still. I could feel it. Everyone felt it. I added softly, "If justice is loud, that's because silence failed us." Applause erupted. But backstage, I got another message from Lily, my sister. It was short, blunt. I didn't know about. The money. I didn't know about the fake signatures. I didn't know anything. I didn't respond. But part of me almost wanted to believe her until she sent a follow-up. You've made your point. Maybe it's time to let this go. That was the final nail, because letting go is for healing. Not when people are still lying, still minimizing, still pretending the damage they caused is just a difference in perspective. So I made one final move. A tribute event. 1 year since. Grandma's passing. At the house. Open to the public. Invites sent to every contact from the estate records. Every community member who loved her. Former co-workers. Church friends. Neighbors. Garden club folks. I didn't invite the family, but they came anyway. My father. My mother. Lily. Brandon stayed away. The yard was strung with lights. Her favorite music played softly to Bussy. The wind smelled like tulips, and her photo rested on a long white table next to the words. She was never disposable. I gave a speech, but it wasn't about the pain. It was about the legacy. I told the story of the porch swing. Of the teacups, of the way she never corrected me when I doubted myself, just handed me truth. Until I recognized it on my own. And then I said, she didn't just give me her home. She gave me her fight. And I've carried it every day. So no one else would have to walk through silence alone again. As I stepped down, I saw them standing off to the side. Dead. Pell. Small. Mom clutching his arm like it could keep him from falling. And Lily just watching me. Tears in her eyes. But it was too late, because they weren't the center of the story anymore. They were just footnotes. And I was the author now. Some people think revenge is about rage, explosions, screaming matches, public takedowns. But they're wrong. The most devastating revenge is quiet. Precise. It's the moment your enemies realize you didn't just survive without them, you built something they'll never be welcome in. It started with a phone call. Kayla Carter? A man said on the other end. This is Agent Donovan with the IRS Criminal Investigations Division. We'd like to formally thank you for the documentation you provided. Your testimony would be helpful in the federal case we're building against Thomas Carter. I felt nothing. No adrenaline. No panic. Just a bone-deep sense of confirmation. This wasn't a maybe anymore. It was real. And he was going down. The financial audit revealed more than we'd imagined. Beyond the forged repayment documents, Dad had moved Grandma's loan through 3 dummy corporations, reinvested it illegally to avoid capital gains tax, and never disclosed the capital infusion on his business taxes. And the cherry on top, he'd been using company funds to pay for personal vacations, luxury renovations, and hush money for a former employee he'd harassed out of the company 5 years earlier. It was over. He was finished. But the rest? That came suddenly. 2 weeks later. An unassuming Wednesday morning. The footage hit the news before I even got a call. There he was, handcuffed, hair disheveled, eyes hollow. Being led out of his company's headquarters in front of cameras. Prominent. Businessman Thomas Carter arrested on multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and tax evasion. They froze the image right on his face, cracked open by disbelief. Like he couldn't believe the consequences finally caught up with him. I watched it in my office at the Second Circle, surrounded by the very women he once dismissed. Women he'd never bothered to see. Survivors like me, all gathered around my laptop, holding our breath. And when I closed the screen, no one cheered. No one clapped. Because this moment didn't need noise. It was enough. But what came next? That was mine to orchestrate. The court hearings began. I didn't attend the first one, but I submitted written testimony. I detailed the forged repayment, the manipulation, the silencing. I included copies of Grandma's original letters, especially the one she wrote to him. The letter that said, "You always demanded the truth unless it made you look small." The press picked that line up like wildfire. They quoted it everywhere. I watched as the empire he built on control and intimidation collapsed beneath the weight. of Grandma's words. The final court date came in late spring. I sat in the back, wearing a soft yellow dress, Grandma's favorite color. Michael sat beside me. He reached over and squeezed my hand gently as my father took the stand for sentencing. His lawyer begged for leniency, cited his age, his contributions to the business community, his record of philanthropy. But the judge saw through it. She read directly from the victim's statements, mine, Grandma's, and others who'd stepped forward. And then she looked him dead in the eye and said, "You built your life on deceit and intimidation. Mr. Carter, you exploited those closest to you, defrauded your mother, and attempted to bury the very people who tried to hold you accountable. I sentence you to 6 years in federal prison." The gavel fell. My mother gasped. Lily looked like someone had punched her in the stomach. But me, I didn't blink, because I'd been grieving this man long before he ever went to prison. After the hearing, the reporters swarmed. I gave one statement. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. Then I walked away. But the story doesn't end with a sentencing. Because when people like him fall, they try to drag others down with them. Brandon lost his job a week later. Lily tried to delete her social media and rebrand herself as an influencer in another city. It didn't work. My mother, she did what she always did, pretended none of it happened. She sent me an email titled, "Family is forever." It said, "You've made your point. Maybe it's time to stop punishing everyone and start healing. I'm still your mother." I didn't reply. I blocked her. Not because I was angry, because I had finally, fully let her go. There was no space for her in the world I built. But the best part, that world was thriving. The second circle had grown into 3 chapters across the state. We secured a grant to open to more in neighboring cities. We hired new therapists, hosted a healing retreat, and best of all, we started the Eloise Fund, a scholarship in Grandma's name for women rebuilding their lives after family estrangement or financial betrayal. Our first recipient was a 19-year-old girl named Esme, thrown out by her parents for refusing to cover for her father's abuse of her younger sister. Esme cried when we handed her the award. And I hugged her with the kind of hug Grandma used to give me. Tight, safe, full of quiet strength. And on the 1-year anniversary of my father's sentencing, I visited Grandma's grave. Alone. I brought fresh tulips and a small ceramic teacup. I sat on the grass and read her the latest letter from Esme, then the latest financial report from the second circle. And then I said, "They tried to bury me, Grandma, but you planted me." The wind picked up. And the chimes from the tiny bell on the cemetery gate began to sing. Soft. Sweet. Strong. I don't tell this story because I want applause. I tell it because I want someone out there to know you don't have to stay small to survive. You don't have to keep swallowing the pain just to keep the family peace. You are not ungrateful for choosing truth. You are not broken for demanding better. And if you've ever been made to feel like the villain in your own life, you're not. You're the one rewriting the ending. So take the pen and don't be afraid to write it in fire.